Choosing the right jewelry, part 2. We're going to talk about gauges today. And Body Piercing Basics, episode number 45, so you must stick around. For those who are new to the channel, my name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. I'm the owner and the operator of the Axiom Body Piercing Studio in lovely Des Moines, Iowa, inside Skin Kitchen Tattoo. So when I talk to you about these things, I'm talking to you at a level of expertise as somebody who's been in this business for, well, almost a whole lifetime and, well, half of my life, and knows a thing or two, and sometimes 3 and 4 things. Depends on the day. So, what are we talking about when we talk about gauge? Gauge is the thickness of the jewelry wire that is put through your body. It is based on the American standards in most cases because body piercing was developed in North America, and that was the standard in North America. Yes, it makes very little sense. It's archaic. It was developed in 1857, and it probably isn't the best option. However, one of the reasons why it is done this way and in this is because there was a standard already set up for it. And medical needles came in gauge. Though medical needles are different than body piercing needles from the standpoint that when they measure out the medical needles, when they measure out the medical needles, they're going by the hollow part, the tube inside, the width of that. With piercing, we're looking at that outside. And it's often why when someone says we're going to pierce at 14 gauge and somebody who works in the medical industry goes, really? You're going to use that big of a needle? They're thinking that we're going to be piercing with a 12 gauge needle, which would be the piercing version of it. Does that make sense? Okay, first off, one thing I should probably bring up is the larger the number, the thinner the material is. I know it's ass backwards, literally, but that's what it is. 18 gauge is going to be a lot thinner than 0 gauge. 0 gauge is going to be much, much thicker. So you should understand that. So when I say a medical needle is like, when I say to a medical person, I'm going to use an 18 gauge needle, what they're thinking is I'm going to use a 16 gauge needle, which, it doesn't make any sense. When in reality, I'd be using a 20 gauge needle. Are you following me? Because I'm not sure if I am. As confusing as that is, there's also the possibility that wherever you're at in the world that they're using the metric system. Now, the metric system brings in a whole new level of fun-filled probability when it comes to sizing. It's like a carnival. Everybody wins a prize. With that, you're going to be dealing with millimeters, and they're usually going to round them up. So 1 millimeter isn't exactly 1 millimeter, it's 1 millimeter .024, or if you're buying jewelry from one manufacturer and they're in the metric system, and you're buying from another manufacturer who's on the American wire gauge standard, you're going to have slightly little bits of difference between the thickness of that jewelry. Granted, unless you get out a caliper and probably a scientific grade one, you're not going to be able to know the difference. It's still going to be a difference. I know, it's weird. So now let's get into some of the more common sizes. First off, the gauge usually starts at it starts at 20 gauge. Actually, it goes all the way up to 24. But most body piercing jewelry, you might be able to find a little bit of 20 gauge jewelry, but most of it starts at 18 gauge and continues up to about 0. Then it starts going into inches or millimeters, depending on where you're purchasing it from. When it comes down to piercing, usually most piercings above the waist are done between 18 gauge and 14 gauge. Below the waist, you need sometimes a slightly thicker piece of jewelry, so you're looking at anywhere from 4 to 10 gauge is a pretty much a standard. So you're saying to yourself, DaVo, this is about choosing the correct jewelry for my piercing. Why are you still talking about all this stuff and all this background? Well, let's get into that. What goes into the thinking when we're picking out a piece of jewelry as far as how thick the jewelry is and what gauge is going to work best? We kind of go through various different ideas in our heads, and a number of factors contribute to it. The first one is the actual durability of the area that we're piercing. If the area is softer tissue, then a thicker gauge may be needed to avoid things like trauma to the piercing migrating or rejecting. We need to anchor it more into the tissue, and a thicker piece of jewelry is going to make it much easier or much harder for your body to reject the jewelry, and less likely that if it gets caught or snagged on something that it's going to rip through you like a cheese cutter. That's why a lot of body piercing jewelry seems extremely thick compared to most of the crap that you buy at the mall to put in your ears. And why everybody has an aunt or a mom or a distant cousin that has the slit-it ears from wearing those huge gigantic hoops. The reason why that happened is because the wire or thickness of that jewelry in the first place was not wide enough or thick enough to withstand that amount of weight and pressure. So another thing we have to consider is the weight. If it's a heavier piece of jewelry, a thicker piece of jewelry is going to work better. If it's a lighter piece of jewelry, maybe a thinner gauge is going to work better. The weight determines and can affect that durability. It can affect that migration, and it can limit damage to the piercing. Because if you have a really heavy piece of jewelry and very thin tissue, it could cause damage and cause other issues. Then it comes in at what looks good in that part of the body. In a lot of cases, depending on your facial structure, the size of your face, the size of the area that we're piercing, or the body, or what have you, in some cases, thinner jewelry is going to look more ornate and fit into the body, while thicker jewelry is going to look like it doesn't fit at all. We've all encountered the person that has the, quadrupled knot, half-inch giant ring hanging out of their eyebrow or their nose or someplace or their lip, and it just doesn't fit into or feel like it's a part of the body. Some people want that. They want that bold looking, etc., and they're happy to do that. But as a piercer, I want it to fit into that anatomy and enhance it. That's my art. That's what I do for a living, is enhancement to make the area look more beautiful. So that's about all I have to say about gauge, the thickness of the jewelry. Hope you found out something you didn't know before, or at least brought up stimulated some of them synapses and got you thinking about it. If you have a question, or you feel like I haven't covered something, or you figure I missed something, please leave a comment. We love to share information here. That's part of the goal of this particular channel, is to do that. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you would like to see more of them, if you'd like to see educational videos on body piercing and tattooing, hit the subscription and tap on the bell so you get notified every single time we post one of these. Also, check out our merch store, link in the description. We are slowly building up a new one. We didn't like the old one, but this one I like. We got, I think, 4 designs up. A lot more to come in the future, but check that out. Until next time, though, I hope all your piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I hope to see you for your body piercing needs in the future. Have a good day, everybody. Go out there and do something special for somebody who matters, even if it's just you.